My name is Barb Casey, and I was the same age I am now when my house burned down, old enough to know how things should work, and young enough to still believe family shows up when everything falls apart. Fire doesn't arrive like it does in movies. There's no dramatic warning, no clean moment where you realize something is wrong and act heroically. It creeps in first, through smell, hot plastic, old wood, something metallic that doesn't belong in the air. Then comes the sound, a sharp crack, like a tree snapping in half, followed by a low roar that grows too fast to understand. By the time I reached the hallway, smoke was already pressing down from the ceiling like a living thing. My boyfriend Mark had our daughter in his arms before I even registered the flames. He didn't yell, he didn't panic. He just moved, fast, controlled, the way you do when fear gets pushed behind instinct. Barb, now, he said. I still checked every room. I don't know why. Habit, maybe, or denial, or that stupid belief that if you look, you can somehow undo what's happening. The guest room was already hazy. The office door was hot to the touch. I remember thinking about photos, birthday cards, our daughter's first drawing taped to the fridge, the box of letters I never opened because I thought I had time. I didn't. I grabbed my phone, my wallet. That was it. We stepped outside barefoot, the night air slapping my lungs like punishment. The house behind us glowed orange, flames licking up the side of the garage like it was made of paper instead of years of work. Something shattered inside, probably the old TV, and the sound echoed louder than it should have. Across the street, neighbors shouted. Sirens approached. Someone wrapped a scratchy Red Cross blanket around my shoulders, but I didn't feel cold. I didn't feel anything. My hands were shaking when I finally looked down. Our daughter tugged at Mark's shirt. "Where's my room?" He knelt immediately, pulled her close. He didn't lie. He didn't explain. He just held her like his arms could build a new house out of nothing. That was when I pulled out my phone. Not to take photos, not to call insurance, not to post. I opened the family group chat. It was the same one we'd always used. Birthdays, holidays, awkward memes no one reacted to. Me, my parents, my older brother, my younger sister. People who shared my last name, people who knew my address. I didn't overthink it. I didn't dramatize. I typed exactly what mattered. We're safe, but everything is gone. Sent. The little read receipts appeared faster than I expected, one by one. Silent confirmations that the message had landed. I waited. I expected my mom to call first. She always did. Or my brother. He liked to be the fixer. Even my sister, if only to ask questions. Nothing. No typing bubbles, no missed calls, no reaction at all. The firefighters moved like they were part of a machine, radios crackling, water hissing against flames that refused to die quietly. The shelter they sent us to was a converted gym, folding cots, bottled water, fluorescent lights that never dimmed. Our daughter fell asleep with her head on Mark's shoulder, like her body had already accepted what my mind couldn't. I checked my phone again. Still nothing. I told myself stories. They're asleep. They're driving. They don't know how bad it is yet. An hour later, I opened Instagram without thinking. Just something to look at. Anything but the smell of smoke still clinging to my hair. The first post stopped me cold. My older brother. A full carousel. 10 photos. My parents. My sister. Laughing. Drinks in hand. Matching shirts at a lake house. My dad wearing stupid inflatable floaties like it was the highlight of his year. Caption, best family weekend ever. Tagged everyone. I stared at the screen, swiping slowly, like if I went fast enough, I'd miss something. Some sign of concern, some acknowledgement that a member of their family had just lost her home. There was nothing. They had read my message, they had seen it, and they had chosen to keep smiling. I showed the phone to Mark. He didn't say anything. Just pressed his lips together and looked away like he didn't trust himself to speak. We stayed in that shelter for 3 nights. Neighbors brought clothes. A firefighter came by on his day off with pizza and said he'd lost his house as a kid too. Strangers remembered our names, asked how we were holding up, made space for us without asking for anything back. My family didn't call once, and somewhere between the hum of the lights and the weight of that silence, something inside me shifted, quietly, permanently. Because when your house burns down, you expect to lose things. You don't expect to lose people, too. The shelter smelled like disinfectant and old rubber mats, the kind of place meant to be temporary but somehow convincing enough to trap you in time. Every night, the lights dimmed but never turned off completely, leaving everything washed in a pale glow that made sleep feel borrowed instead of earned. Our daughter stopped asking when we were going home on the second night. That was the part that broke me. She didn't cry. She didn't tantrum. She just folded herself into the routine like it was something she'd practiced before, lining up her shoes next to the cot, brushing her teeth from a plastic cup, calling the thin mattress my bed without hesitation. Kids adapt faster than adults because they don't have the luxury of denial. I did. I kept checking my phone like the silence was a mistake that would correct itself. Like maybe the message hadn't gone through properly. Maybe the app glitched. Maybe my parents were on a boat with no signal, or my sister's phone had died, or my brother was busy playing host and hadn't noticed yet. Every excuse felt thinner than the last. Mark never pushed me to talk about it. He just stayed close, hand on my back, shoulder brushing mine, grounding me in ways I didn't know how to ask for. He slept lighter than usual, waking every time our daughter shifted, like his body had decided it was on permanent watch. On the third morning, a woman from the Red Cross asked if we had a long-term plan. I almost laughed. Strangers were asking questions my own family hadn't bothered to think about. That afternoon, Mark's parents drove in. They didn't come empty-handed. Clothes folded neatly in bags. Shoes in our daughter's size. A stuffed bear she clutched like it had always been hers. They didn't ask what happened in detail. They didn't pry. They didn't ask why my parents weren't there. Mark's dad pressed a prepaid card into my palm and said, "This isn't charity, it's respect." That word hit me harder than the fire. Respect. I hadn't realized how long it had been since anyone in my family had offered me that without attaching conditions, without expecting repayment, without a ledger forming silently in the background. When we left the shelter, I didn't feel relieved. I felt exposed, like I'd stepped out of one kind of uncertainty into another. Insurance dragged its feet. Forms piled up. Every conversation ended with processing times and we'll be in touch. So I worked, whatever I could find. Cleaning jobs, labor gigs, fixing fences, hauling debris, sanding old wood until my hands ached in a way that felt honest. Every dollar I earned felt heavier than money I'd made before. Earned, not assumed. Weeks passed. My phone stayed quiet. No calls, no apologies, no awkward, "how are you holding up" texts. Then one night, after a long day helping repair a roof in Echo Park, I set my phone on the counter of the small apartment we'd scraped together and walked away to wash the grime off my hands. When I came back, the screen was lit up. Missed calls stacked like an accusation. I counted without meaning to. 92. All from the family group chat. My chest tightened, not with panic, but with something colder. There was a single text from my mother, sitting at the bottom like it belonged to a completely different story. "We need you immediately. It's just $5,000. I stared at it for a long time. No mention of the fire. No, "Are you okay?" No acknowledgement of weeks of silence. Just need. Something inside me settled then. Not anger, not sadness. Certainty. They hadn't reached out when I lost everything. They reached out when they needed something. I didn't answer right away. The phone stayed on the counter, lighting up every few minutes like it was testing me. Messages rolled in. My sister first. "Please don't make this harder than it has to be." Then my brother. "It's not that serious. Chill." Then my mom again. "We know you have it, Barb. Don't be dramatic." Dramatic? I thought about my daughter sleeping on a plastic mattress, about Mark eating cold takeout so she could have the last warm bite, about strangers showing up when blood didn't. I thought about all the times I'd stepped in without being asked, covered shipping costs, paid tuition gaps, co-signed leases, swiped cards and transferred money, and told myself this is just what family does. They didn't see me as a person in crisis. They saw me as a resource temporarily unavailable. That night I didn't argue, I didn't explain, I didn't defend myself. I opened my banking apps, and calmly, deliberately, I started closing doors they'd never believed could shut. I didn't feel dramatic when I did it. That's what surprised me most. There was no shaking in my hands, no rush of adrenaline, no sense of revenge. Just a steady calm, like I was finally completing a task that had been overdue for years. One by one, I disconnected them. The shared savings account I'd opened years ago, just in case my older brother needed help with one of his endless ideas. Gone. The credit card my parents used for groceries that somehow always included restaurant charges and weekend trips. Canceled. The lease I'd co-signed for my younger sister's apartment near campus. My name removed. From now on, the landlord could deal with her directly. I didn't send a message explaining any of it. I didn't need to. They would feel it soon enough. The phone kept lighting up as if it were alive, pulsing with expectation. When the messages changed tone, I almost admired the predictability. My sister called first. I let it go to voicemail. Her message was breathless, frantic. "Barb, what did you do? I can't log into the account. There has to be a mistake." My brother tried next, this time through Messenger when I blocked his number. "You're really going to do this? Over a misunderstanding?" A misunderstanding. My mother followed with a paragraph long enough to require scrolling. She wrote about family loyalty, about how people change when they listen to outsiders, about how I was letting Mark control me. That part almost made me laugh. Mark, the man who had carried our daughter through smoke, who hadn't slept through a full night since the fire, who never once told me what to do about my family. Somehow, he was the villain now, simply because I wasn't funneling money into their lives anymore. Then my father finally reached out. The man who hadn't said a word since the house burned down. His voicemail was short, barely a minute. His voice flat, clipped, like he was reading from a script he'd practiced in his head. "You're cutting off your own blood, Barb. Outsiders won't care when it really counts. You'll regret this." I listened to it twice. Then I saved it. I don't know why. Maybe I needed proof that even now, when everything was on fire, he still spoke to me like I was the problem. That night, I sat at the small kitchen table we'd found on Craigslist, sanding a nick out of the edge, because I couldn't stand how it caught my sleeve. Mark was helping our daughter with homework on the floor, his voice low and patient. The scene felt small, fragile, but real. "Do you think I did the right thing?" I asked. Mark looked up at me, surprised. Then he nodded once, slow and certain, like the answer had never been in doubt. I slept better that night than I had in years. The next morning, there was a new message from my sister. "You'll be sorry when you need us." I didn't open it, because I finally understood something I'd been blind to for a long time. I had never needed them. They had only made sure I believed I did. The silence that followed wasn't peaceful. It felt strategic, like they were regrouping, deciding which angle would work best on this new version of me, the one who didn't fold at the first wave of guilt. The cracks showed quickly. A week later, my sister sent another message. This time, no words at first, just a screenshot. An eviction notice. Below it, 2 lines. "I hope you're happy. This is your fault." I set the phone down and went back to work. That same afternoon, my brother posted a rant on his stories. He didn't use my name, but he didn't have to. Phrases like fake loyalty and blood should mean something filled the screen. He tagged me. He tagged Mark. Then he linked a GoFundMe. His car had broken down. He needed help. I scrolled past it and focused on the reclaimed wood in front of me, smoothing rough edges into something usable. Honest work. Quiet work. The kind that doesn't ask you to bleed for it. That evening, my mother left another voicemail. This one was different. She was crying. She said they were behind on bills, that my dad's hours had been cut, that they never asked me for anything I couldn't afford. She said she didn't recognize me anymore, that I was becoming cold, that I was turning into the kind of woman who would end up bitter and alone. That one landed. I stood there for a long time, phone in hand, thumb hovering over the call button. I imagined telling her the truth, that I'd been drowning for years, patching holes while they kept drilling new ones, that the fire didn't change me, it exposed me. But I didn't call, because I knew how it would go. She would cry, I would soften, I would help, and I would wake up right back where I started, broke in a way money couldn't fix. Instead, life on our side kept moving, slowly, forward. Mark's parents invited us to stay with them. I resisted at first, pride flaring up like it always did when help came without strings. But they insisted. "You have a child," his mother said gently. "You don't need to prove anything." Living there felt different, safe, like we were wanted, not tolerated. Mark's dad built a birdhouse with our daughter that first weekend. His mom folded us into every meal like we'd always belonged. They didn't ask about my family. They didn't need to. One morning, over coffee on the back porch, Mark's dad said something that stayed with me. "You can't set yourself on fire to keep people warm, Barb," he said. "They'll just keep asking for more wood." That week, I filed paperwork to remove myself from my family's financial obligations. Trusts, accounts, names on documents I hadn't even realized still tied me to a life I was done living. The process would take time, but the relief was immediate. Then, 2 nights later, there was a knock at the door. Mark glanced through the peephole and stiffened. "It's your brother." I hadn't seen him since before the fire, and the look on his face told me whatever was coming next was going to change everything again. I stepped onto the porch before Mark could say anything, closing the door behind me with a soft click that felt louder than it should have. The night air was cool, carrying the smell of cut grass and distant traffic, ordinary, calm, almost insulting in how normal it all felt. My older brother stood there like he didn't quite belong in his own body anymore. His hair was unwashed. Dark circles clung under his eyes. He wore an expensive hoodie I recognized immediately, one I'd bought him years ago when his credit card had maxed out, and he joked that it was basically my fault. He didn't look at me right away. He looked past me, at the house, at the life I was living without him. "So," he said finally, "you're really doing this." I didn't answer. I walked down the porch steps instead. Gravel shifted under my feet as I stopped near the edge of the yard. After a moment, he followed, slower, like he couldn't believe I wasn't inviting him inside. The silence stretched until it became uncomfortable enough for him to break it. "They think you're serious this time," he said. "Mom's barely talking. Dad's furious. Jordan's, well, you know." I let out a short, humorless laugh. Shocking. "No, listen," he said quickly. "I didn't come to beg. I came to tell you something." That caught my attention. He hesitated, then rubbed his hands together like he was cold. "I was supposed to come the night of the fire." The words landed heavier than I expected. "I was in the car," he continued. "I'd already pulled out of the driveway. Then Dad called." I felt my jaw tighten. "He told me not to go," my brother said. "Said you were exaggerating. Said you just wanted attention." Mom agreed. I stared at him, the world narrowing, until all I could hear was my own breathing. "You knew my house was burning," I said slowly, "and you stayed away." He nodded once. "They didn't believe it was real. Thought you were trying to guilt everyone into money again. They didn't even think it was serious until a week later." 10 years. 10 years of helping, of fixing, of paying. And the one time I needed them, I was accused of manipulation. "I should have fought them," he said. "I knew something was wrong. I turned around." I didn't comfort him. I didn't argue. I didn't need to. Then he surprised me. "I moved out last week," he said quietly. "I'm done." I looked at him then, really looked. He wasn't here to collect. He wasn't here to threaten. He looked tired in a way that had nothing to do with money. "They talk about you like you're a monster now," he continued. "But I see it. You didn't change. You just stopped letting them take." He reached into his jacket and pulled out a folded envelope. "Mom wrote this," he said. "Said it was better than texting." I didn't take it. So he sat down on this porch step and read it instead. Inside weren't apologies. There were receipts, medical bills, lab work, hospital visits, all with my father's name printed neatly at the top. Diagnoses hinted at but never explained fully. At the bottom of the last page, one line in my mother's handwriting. "This is why we asked for the money." I didn't speak for a long time. My brother stood up, hands shoved into his pockets. "If you ever want to talk," he said, not meeting my eyes, "I'm around." Then he walked off into the dusk like he wasn't sure he deserved anything more. Later that night, after Mark tucked our daughter into bed, I sat at the kitchen table and unfolded the papers again. My heart didn't race. My hands didn't shake. But something heavy settled in my chest. For the first time, I wondered if the silence I'd chosen had cost me the truth. My phone buzzed. It was my father. I let it ring. Then it buzzed again. This time I answered. His voice was different, lower, unsteady. "I was wrong," he said. I didn't respond. "I didn't believe the fire was as bad as you said," he continued. "I thought you were angry, lashing out, trying to force us to react." In the background, I heard a low, rhythmic beeping. "A hospital." "I got diagnosed in April," he said after a pause. "Stage 3. I didn't tell anyone at first. I didn't want you to think I was using it to guilt you." That almost made me laugh, but the sound caught in my throat. "When we ran out of options, your mother sent the message," he said quietly. "I know it looked terrible, but I didn't know what else to do." I closed my eyes. 92 missed calls. Weeks of silence. Years of expectation. "I was wrong about you," he said finally. "You carried this family for a long time. I thought it was weakness." I listened until he finished. Then I said nothing. Because understanding something doesn't mean you owe it forgiveness. And for the first time in my life, I was choosing not to rush into the fire for anyone else. I didn't sleep after that call. I lay awake listening to the quiet house around me, the kind of quiet that doesn't feel empty, just settled. Mark breathed evenly beside me, one arm flung protectively over our daughter, where she'd crawled into our bed sometime after midnight. I stared at the ceiling and let my father's words replay, over and over, like they might change if I examined them closely enough. I was wrong. I thought it was weakness. Stage 3. Understanding arrived slowly and not gently. My father hadn't lied because he hated me. He'd lied because admitting the truth would have meant admitting how much he'd taken, how much he'd relied on my silence, my sense of duty, my fear of being the difficult daughter. Morning came without ceremony. Coffee brewed. Our daughter ate cereal and told Mark about a dream where her room had wings. Life, stubborn and ordinary, continued. That was when I realized something important. Their crisis didn't pause my healing. It didn't erase what happened. Later that day, my father called again. This time, I didn't let it go to voicemail. I need to say this once, I told him before he could start, and I need you to listen. He went quiet. You didn't lose me because I refused to give you money, I said. You lost me when you read my message and decided it wasn't worth answering. He tried to interrupt. I didn't let him. You taught me that love was conditional, I continued, that it came with expectations and silence and guilt. I didn't change. I just stopped accepting the terms. There was a long pause. Then, quietly, I know. That was it. No apology big enough to rewrite the past. No explanation that could undo years of imbalance. Just two people finally naming the truth. After we hung up, I sat on the back porch with Mark's dad. He didn't ask questions. He didn't give advice. He just handed me a mug and let me exist. That afternoon, I finalized the last of the paperwork. My name removed, my account separate, my obligations ended. I didn't do it out of spite. I did it so my daughter would never confuse love with sacrifice the way I had. Weeks later, my mother sent one last message. It wasn't angry. It wasn't manipulative. It was short. I hope someday you'll understand why we did what we did. I stared at it for a long time. Then I deleted it. Because I finally understood something she never had. Understanding doesn't mean agreement. And forgiveness doesn't require access. The fire that night hadn't just taken our house. It burned away the lie that family is defined by blood alone. It revealed who showed up when everything fell apart, and who only reached out when they needed to be carried. I built something new after that, slowly, intentionally, with people who didn't expect me to disappear into their needs. I stopped being the safety net, and for the first time in my life, I felt solid standing on my own ground.